Today's expert conversation is with Taubi Motlhabane, CEO of the Cape Town International Convention Centre. This conversation is one of many to determine the role of women in responding to crisis situations and how, through their many decisions and interventions, they constitute a strong network of agents building peace on a daily basis without even realizing it. Social partners are necessary to strengthen the global governance architecture, to address the world's most pressing challenges, to do what is necessary for peace. It is important to capture these women and their interventions, to capture their voices, and to appreciate the role that individual citizens are playing, because societal interventions address the interconnection of all life, the intersectionality of peace, justice, equality, planetary survival, and other aspects of life. Welcome to Taubie. So Taubie, I would like to start by asking you to share some of your insights, as you moved from Tshwane to Cape Town, bearing in mind the joke that is often heard about Cape Town being another country, and share those experiences to your upbringing in the Northwest.
Yes, I was brought up in the Northwest, born and brought up in the Northwest, went to school, and I went to school most of my life when it was the homelands system. So I grew up in Bophuthatswana, which was quite interesting that I was in South Africa, but I was not considered a South African. And, growing up in an area of South Africa that was not considered South Africa because of the color of my skin and because of the apartheid system, and growing up actually in what a lot of South Africans would regard as a privileged bubble, because then in the homelands, as you know, there was supposedly no apartheid, so we lived in a very mixed society. But of course, post-1994, the reality hits that it was not insulated from apartheid. It was part of the apartheid process. So when I got the opportunity to come and work in Cape Town, when I was approached to apply for the job, my first instinct was absolutely not. I will never come and live in Cape Town, the most racist city in South Africa and the most racist place in Africa. I was not willing to come and live in, we used to call it the Republic of Cape Town. Sometimes there is reminders of why it was called that. And like I said, there was a very persistent young lady who was pursuing my application for this job. And I eventually, submitted, and I came for the interviews, and pleasantly surprised to find that my perceptions about Cape Town as a city were proven wrong, basically, that it is not what we have always known it to be. When I got to the CTICC, the board, totally amazing, very committed to transformation. The organization itself absolutely surprised me how ethical it is. The work ethic is like nothing I've ever seen in my entire career. And, but that does not mean that it was all, rainbows and unicorns, as I like to say. I did experience some of what I feared in Cape Town, especially as a Black woman. Walking into a city that is male-dominated and white male-dominated in positions of power and leadership. So there were, and there still are, incidences where I'm reminded where I am, and I'm reminded why Cape Town had the reputation that it did. But I must say, I was pleasantly surprised walking into the CTICC as an organization and having the opportunity to make the change that we all want to see in South Africa in terms of gender and, and color equity, in terms of people of color being allowed to be in positions of leadership, not because of their color and their gender, because they're capable. But as we know, South Africa, for a very long time, when it comes to people of color and women in particular, definitely been judged because of our color and because of our gender, and nobody wanting to know our capability to do the job.
So if you look at South African culture and this culture of racism, right, we need to understand that to shift this culture of racism, we need courageous people willing to reimagine the norms of our society. And the CTICC has done that by hiring a Black woman, and you taking the step by stepping into a space which is, which has been predominantly held by white males. We are reintroducing our values and cultural systems through these reimagining of the norms. But do you find that you are challenged in your work and that you are forced to reimagine how you do what you do by the people that you encounter and the mindset that is prevalent, around you? And then does this impact on the decisions that you make?
Absolutely. When I first got to Cape Town, I realized just how different living in the two provinces is. I mean, having lived in Gauteng, I was born in the Northwest, grew up there, my family still lives there, but I spent a lot of my working life in Gauteng, and developed and grew in my career in Gauteng. And having lived and worked in Gauteng for the most important parts of my career and coming to Cape Town, you realize it's almost like a culture shock. And not a culture shock in that black and white culture. It's a culture shock in the confidence that people of color have in themselves in Gauteng versus to what I discovered when I moved to Cape Town. And a very rude reminder of the impact and the legacy of apartheid, that, as people of color, you were subjugated for so long that you started to really believe that you don't know anything. You believe that you don't have anything to contribute. You don't believe in the value that you inherently have because of who you are as a human being to actually make a positive contribution to the world. And I found that at the CTICC, that between or amongst the people of color, especially the Xhosa and the colored people, there was such a lack of confidence and a subversive feeling of, I am not a person of value, I don't have anything valuable to contribute, where they would not question anything, they would not contribute anything. There were people that were willing to just take instruction because they did not believe or did not even dare question their leaders, question decisions, contribute to improving things. And it was something that we had to consciously work on, myself and the executive, who were, thank God, people from Gauteng, to say that, okay, if we are going to really build this organization so that the young people that are currently in the organization can run the organization when we are gone in a few years, we have to not just build their knowledge of the work, but we have to build their confidence for them to realize that they do know. They do have the right to question their leadership. They do have a right to say to the leadership, absolutely, that's not the best solution. And to actually build a leadership cohort that is not just for the CTICC, but for this country and for the communities. They have children that must look up to them. And we have a responsibility as the leadership team of the CTICC to empower people to be who they were meant to be, what they were meant to come and contribute in the world. And when I got to Cape Town, we found that, it's not as obvious as you would expect it to be, especially amongst the people of color, because even our education system does not educate us to be leaders. It educates us to be followers. And you cannot have a society of followers only because then who's going to lead if we are all followers? So we had to do something. And I encourage my team to question me. I encourage my team to disagree with me. And that's what we want. We want people that think and not just yes, yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
So you raise very important points, and that is, of course, firstly, the humility to recognize that, there are people who can contribute meaningfully and positively, and that you're not the only one who should be taking the decisions, but that others should guide that decision-making process. You raise another very important point, and that is the ability to dialogue with trust, to build trust in the work environment, to reduce the conflict, to reduce that dehumanization process that many people experience and feel all the time. So we know that civil society organizations have the greatest contact with people on the ground, right? And many of them are working tirelessly to contribute towards issues such as violence, building peace, fostering well-being and development. What is your role in these particular things? So you're a professional woman, you're in an ethical organization, but do you see a social responsibility for yourself? And how are you and your organization working in terms of, being present in these spaces where you alleviate or de-escalate on a daily basis?
Look, the CTICC, again, I mean, I sound like I'm the biggest fan of the CTICC, and not because I'm the CEO, but because this is an organization that absolutely, I mean, the fact that I did not want to come to Cape Town and work here, but for whatever reason, fate got me here. I have learned and grown so much because I've walked into an organization that is absolutely committed to not just being a business for the sake of an income, but a business that is actually a social citizen of the communities in which it operates. A business that has got a social conscience that looks at what we do, the business that we do, how it impacts the communities that we work in. The CTICC therefore has got a local community partner program where every 3 years we partner with 3 local community organizations, civil society organizations that we contribute to in money and in kind to actually ensure that we have a positive impact in the communities that we operate in. An example is a gardening organization in Khayelitsha and in Gugulethu called Abalimi Basekhaya, which means the home gardeners, where it's a group of women that grow food. And the CTICC committed that for 3 years, when they were our local community partner, we will procure vegetables for our use at the center when we prepare foods for our events from them, so that they actually have an income, and they use some of that money to do programs for children and women in distress, helping with education, after school programs, so that we know that the impact of our business is actually making the communities that we operate in better. And these local community partners are chosen by our staff. Some of this staff live in those communities. So if they can see that the organization they work for is actually committed to more than just them working here and making money, but improving the lives of their brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, that's a good thing. One other community civil society organization that we work with, and it's a legacy partnership, is the Foundation for Alcohol-Related Research, FAR, where their job is really doing a lot of research around the fetal alcohol syndrome. You know, the whole DOP system originated in Western Cape, where farm workers in wine farms were paid with alcohol. This has become a legacy problem, where even today, in 2023, we still see people being paid with alcohol. And even if they're not paid with alcohol, alcohol has become the drug of choice for escaping your problem, for medicating away your worries. And kids are born with addiction to alcohol. These children have got many, many developmental problems. And when the parents can't deal with the developmental problems of the baby, how do they cope with the baby who's crying through the night? They medicate the child with alcohol. So it's a vicious cycle. The CTICC as part of our revenue streams, we sell alcohol. We cannot continue to believe that what we do in the course of our daily business does not have an impact on communities. We are part of the problem. We are, whether we want to admit it, whether we can say it's indirect, we are part of the problem. And what is it that we are going to do as CTICC to mitigate the problem that we are causing in society? We have to step up and take responsibility and actually say that selling of alcohol is part of the problem. We are part of the problem because we are in the business of selling alcohol as much as we sell space and food and other things. So we have a responsibility to work with such organizations to try and mitigate, to whatever little extent, the problem that we are adding into the world, into society. And we take that very seriously. And we continue to see how we can work with organizations like the Gift of the Givers, where, yes, those are good, feel good, media love those kind of things, where we are sending 1 million liters of water to Durban, but the problem is much bigger. And we can't ignore that in the course of our business, we add to the problems that society has. And therefore, if we are conscious of how we are contributing, we then can identify how we can try and help to start to solve some of the problems. So it's very, very important to the CTICC. And for me, as a person who comes from an African background, it's very, very important that I take responsibility for my impact on the village.
So you raise important points, and that is about your contribution, especially where you see that you, in one way, you might be contributing to the problem, and in another way, you need to mitigate that by doing something to ensure that, for example, the selling of alcohol should not become a pandemic in your community. Now, you're conscious of a particular issue. That's what you're saying. In leadership position, you need to be conscious about everything and the ethical manner in which your business is conducted. What then should be the criteria, the values, or the goals in determining intervention in a social justice or social cohesion or nation building process? For example, what are things like important to you, empathy, generosity, those kinds of values or goals that are important when you make a decision about a particular social justice or nation building process, or even to de-escalate a conflict situation?
I think it's very easy for us as corporations to just spew out platitudes and say words that sound like we are really in the battlefield with people that are struggling. But unless you actually make it part of your governance system, where you can report on it, get audited on it, and measure the impact, and be responsible to a third-party auditor or a third-party evaluator. These are just platitudes. And as the CTICC, we say that, okay, we need to walk the talk. We are committed as the CTICC to the 10 of the global UN Global Compact, Global Compact principles. We get audited every year. We report on it in our annual report, to make sure that we are not just saying things that we are actually not doing, to keep us honest, to keep us accountable to somebody that we said we do believe in the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, and we will adhere to them. We subscribe also, right now, we respond to 15 of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. Again, we report on it to make sure that in everything we do, through human resources, through finance, through facilities operation, through everything we do, through, if we are saying, sustain ESG, show me the numbers and actually make a commitment so that it's not just talk. Because yes, we all, and a lot of people that talk but not able to execute, it doesn't mean they're bad people. They really have good intentions. But if you don't make it part of your governance structure, it becomes very difficult to do. And for us, it is something that you need to measure. are you actually achieving the things that are so important for you, or the things you say are so important for you to achieve? It is very, very important, because we all have a heartfelt need to contribute to de-escalating violence, helping people in need, protecting, our environment. When we talk about sustainability, it's not just environmental sustainability, it's economic sustainability, it's social, but do it in a way that you can actually show the results of what you say you're going to achieve.
I like that where you said it's not just about ticking the boxes. So it's about actual substantive participation and involvement. Now, for you raise very often well, you put it this way, we say committed, the CTICC is committed, but you're in a position of leadership at the CTICC. Does then your identity impact on the way in which the CTICC and your board make this decision? And is your decisions and the decisions that you take together as the organization, as the head, the professional head of this particular organization, impacted by particular ideals that are implicit to your cultural background, because you're now a Black female in a white-dominated space? Are you changing the way in which things are happening, the way in which decisions are being made? And is your cultural background, informing much of those decisions?
I honestly hope that I am changing the way decisions are being made. I'm hoping that, because it is my lens, totally my lens, and my lens is informed by how I grew up, where I grew up, who I am, and the cultural background that I come from, that I know for a fact that it does take a village to correct, to bring up a child. And if the child is the CTICC, my cultural background tells me that if I am not, as the neighbor, look after this child, whether the parent is there or not, I am doing a disservice to this child. And I am hoping that I am changing how decisions are made. I'm hoping that I am making the CTICC as an organization more humane than I found it. Because I totally believe, and I totally believe that if you look after the human beings, the organization will automatically thrive. But if I'm only concerned about what's in the bank account, then I forget my cultural upbringing of society first, individual later. We come, and in South Africa, we call it Ubuntu. But I believe it is a cultural thing of societies that are not necessarily Western, whether it is Arabic societies, whether it is Indian societies. There is a cultural commonality amongst these cultures of a village. We have a village value system where people of color in South Africa and on the continent have a village value system where the decisions you make as an individual, we are very, very conscious, or we should be at least very conscious that whether we are consciously aware of it, that they have an impact on a collective. They have a huge impact on a collective. So as a Black woman CEO, the first one at the CTICC, I have a responsibility to make sure that I bring all the good values that I grew up with. And I remember why those values were important, because it was to make sure that the bigger society is actually better off when you leave it than when you found it. So it is very, very important to me that I don't forget the good cultural values that I was brought up with, and the ones that actually have got a good impact on the society.
This cultural background and the similarity of, relating African society to other societies. Certainly, if you look at Ummah amongst the Muslim societies, this is a focus on the all and not just on the individual. There is a reminder within female leadership, I see, that there should be a change in the way in which, corporate governance, professional leadership, etc., should be maintained per se. And in an interview that I had with Busisiwe Mavuso, she said that, females are bringing a new ideal to the front, and that is the soft is the new hard. Basically, you need this change in the way in which you interact with people, the recognition of the humanity, the kindness, the empathy, the gentleness. It's about building up people in a society that has been very traumatized. So what qualities should a woman, in your opinion, in the corporate, professional, NGO sector encompass in order to contribute meaningfully to issues of crisis and conflict? Because as you rightfully say, in Cape Town, you still have the fetal alcohol syndrome. You still have issues of diminutive behavior by people of color, feeling that they're not strong enough or confident enough to take on positions or to be challenging. So what qualities should a woman bring to the fore here for you?
There's this thing where they used to refer to humane skills as soft skills. I think those are essential skills. They are not soft skills. It's not like, oh, we're going to have soft skills training now, or communication. If you can't communicate, you can't run a business. I believe those are the most essential skills for any leader, because unless you are going to be a brute where you are not going to talk to people, you are going to beat them into submission, you are going to kill who does not agree with you. And we have seen that those skills do not work. Wars have been fought throughout the ages. They have not achieved anything. Those skills do not work. The brutal and brute force skills. I believe any leader, woman or man, in any position, whether it's in government, whether it's in the church, whether it is it doesn't matter. Any leader needs to understand that in any situation, the people that deliver the work that needs to happen, even if you are running a robotics company, people build robots. If you don't know how to relate to human beings, you cannot lead. It doesn't matter where. Government, in a company, in the army, in a church. If you do not know how to lead people, to communicate with people, if you do not know how to empathize with people, if you do not know how to understand people, if you do not know that your impact on human beings is what determines the success or failure of a business, of a country, then you should not be in leadership. And I think the values and the leadership skills that any leader should have is to understand that every single human being is fallible. Every single human being feels pain. Every single human being makes mistakes that they don't want anybody to find out about. Everybody has got a side of them that they want to get hidden, because everybody is insecure. Everybody has got things that they are so brilliant at, but they don't know how to. Every human being, including Cyril Ramaphosa. So it is understanding. And I believe, for me, if we had leadership, you're doing a master's degree or a doctorate in leadership, I wish they would teach us more how to understand the human being. I really wish, because then you would be even more powerful to direct a human being, or hopefully for a good end, not to direct them for your nefarious ends. But empathy is a huge thing. Empathy is a huge thing.
Empathy certainly is, and if you consider that it's being fully cognizant of what the other is feeling. So as a social partner, you are a social partner, but you yourself take these decisions when you decide what to do. Do you believe that business, NGOs and civil society groups should play an active role in holding the state accountable, and where possible drive alternate approaches to governance in order to nurture a more participatory democratic process to contribute to the development of the societies and the communities whom you are in direct contact with?
I think we give government too much power. As societies, we have disempowered ourselves so much that everything that happens, we look to government to rescue us. And it does not work. We have seen that it doesn't work. The people that are solving problems in society is not government most of the time. It's civil society. Society themselves, if they stand up, and when they do stand up to solve their own problems, they are better positioned to solve their own problems because we know what our problems are. And we know what causes our problems. For us to expect for somebody that is sitting at the union buildings in an office that has never been even on the ground where the problem is happening to solve it, it's unrealistic. And it's almost like we're abdicating the responsibility to solve the problems that most of the times we are causing. And I believe there is a big space for civil society and corporations and businesses that operate in society to stand up. But I don't know where the solution is, where we devolve the responsibility of actually sorting out the problems, devolve it to the people that are on the ground, not to a municipality that is not in touch, but the organizations. But I think, again, it will take a very advanced civilization or society where we know our interest is not self-interest, because corruption then becomes the wall that makes it impossible to do this, where people seeing, okay, if I have these resources that are meant for this problem, but I can take these resources from our own, again, this is where we forget the whole ethos of Ubuntu, where I'm doing something very important, not just for my own benefit, but for the benefit of the good. Because if it's for the benefit of the masses, I also benefit. But I don't know how we get to a place in our consciousness evolution and civilization, consciousness civilization, to actually understand that when I steal from you, I'm eventually stealing from myself. If I'm going to burn a clinic because I'm unhappy with Cyril Ramaphosa does not go to that clinic. His children do not need the clinic. I am destroying my own thing. And it is where we have gotten to, there is a serious tear in the value of our society, where we actually don't even recognize that we are destroying our own lives. We are destroying ourselves because, I don't know, there's a disconnect.
There is certainly.
There's a disconnect where there's a tear in the values that we had a long time ago, because we have become individualistic. We have become concerned with glorifying destruction, glorifying terror, glorifying violence. And this has come from this whole social media thing that, I never ever use hate. It's very rare. I hate what social media has done to our social fabric and our values, because we promote bad news. It is the thing now, bad news. When I am dying to have a good news radio station, a good news TV, where I will listen to the news. If you tell me about a lot of good that is happening, we're not interested as a society. I want to hear how many people were murdered. I want to see the trains. I want to see car accident. And it's like, oh my goodness, is this what is driving us now?
It's
and
good.
There is something very wrong.
Sorry, I'm glad that you raised that, because in another interview that I had with Gladys, she also said it's time that we focused on the positive stories, that look at the people and the issues that are good stories, and how we're building together, we're building a better place. And we've just got a few minutes left, and I need to catch with you two very important ideas, and I would like you to share this with me. You said that you are a social partner, that you have a consciousness, you have Ubuntu, and that you need to lead with these values. So can you share a little bit with us? The first is your experiences, thoughts, or interventions during any of the crises mentioned, in Cape Town, whether it was COVID, or whether how you responded to the floods or the unrest in the UKZN, or to Day Zero, and what were the lessons learned for you as a social partner in terms of contributing towards this country, and of course in people relationships?
Okay. I mean, when I got to Cape Town, it was January 2020, 6 weeks before COVID. And when COVID hit, the impact on the people that we employ was that we had to close down the building, we could not host events. But the opportunity that I was really grateful for, to be able, I mean, everybody was feeling sorry for me, and I was so grateful that I was here when this pandemic hit and forced the CTICC closed, because it gave me the opportunity to be in the forefront of making a social contribution that I would have otherwise never had, where the CTICC as an organization was turned into one of the biggest field hospital for COVID on the continent. And this is where we saw how the work that we do can actually contribute to helping human beings without actually making money. And it taught us that it does not matter what the crisis is. It could be the worst thing that the world has ever experienced. Everybody always has an opportunity to contribute positively. So turning the CTICC into a COVID hospital and helping to alleviate the impact on hospitals was a huge privilege for us to work with the health department of the Western Cape. Another example was working with the Gift of the Givers, where, I mean, when they approached us to help them collect water in the Western Cape to take it to KZN, it was not about the CTICC making money. Again, a huge reminder and very impactful reminder that you are part of the collective. People in Durban are struggling with drinking water. People cannot bury their dead because they can't wash the bodies. Hospitals are not able to operate because there's no clean water. We can do a very small thing of saying, we have space that people can come and drop water. We did not contribute and buy the water. We did not gather the million liters of water, the people of Cape Town. And it is an opportunity for us to be a player where we can remind people of their goodness, remind people of their power to do good. And that for me was also very humbling. And to remind ourselves that regardless of all the bad things that are happening, we have the power to make a good difference in one person's life. That person that had 5 liters of water to drink, that made a difference to that person. And that is why I say we must never, ever forget that there's a lot of good that happens in the world. There's a lot of good people. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to constantly remind ourselves and people that we lead, that they can make a good difference.
Thank you, Taubie. That's a very powerful statement to end on, and I'm going to end it there. I really appreciate the time that you've given me today.
Thank you for the opportunity to actually contribute. I'm looking forward to your completed project, and this is great work that you're doing. I have to thank you.
And you too, especially. I mean, you've given me so many insights. So hopefully we'll be able to take the good message forward.